In 2017, Rapha was untouchable. The jerseys were $300. The stores looked like art galleries. It was the Apple of cycling. Today, they're closing shops, running 50% off sales, and bleeding over £22 million a year. This isn't just a story of a brand in decline, it's a warning. Because what killed Rapha wasn't bad product, it was something far more dangerous: success. In 2004, Rapha launched in London with a mission to reinvent cycling apparel. Founder Simon Mottrell, a passionate cyclist, was frustrated by the garish utilitarian kit of the time. He envisaged cycling clothing that combined high performance with classic style and storytelling. From the start, Rapha wasn't just selling jerseys, it was selling a lifestyle and an identity. The brand's marketing was pure cycling poetry, evoking the hardest climbs and the longest days and romanticising the grit and the glory of European road racing. Each product came with a narrative, from the nostalgic photos of the Tour de France to those little essays about suffering on the bike. By tapping into cycling's rich heritage, Rapha made middle-aged weekend warriors feel like part of an exclusive golden age of the sport. This approach resonated. Rapha cultivated a cult-like following that would make high street fashion labels jealous. Early customers became evangelists. They were drawn to Rapha's obsessive attention to quality and aesthetics. The signature look, understated black kit with a single contrast armband, normally white. It stood in stark contrast to the loud logos of mainstream cycling gear. Owning Rapha meant you belonged to a select club of riders with taste and a wallet to match. The prices were undeniably steep. £100+ for a pair of shorts, £80 for a pair of gloves. This fact divided riders from day one. Detractors derided it as overpriced hipster nonsense, but fans believed the premium was justified. Mottram defended Rapha's costs by pointing to the superior merino fabrics, which were nice, the craftsmanship, the free repair service, and the brand's unique vibe. In his view, you weren't just buying a jersey, you were investing in a piece of cycling culture. Rapha understood the power of community early on. In 2015, it launched the Rapha Cycling Club, RCC, a members-only club that further fueled its cult status. Within 3 years, RCC membership rocketed from 600 people to over 10,000 people. Members got access to exclusive club jerseys, club rides, VIP treatment at Rapha's stylish clubhouse cafes, and a sense of belonging to an in-crowd of dedicated cyclists. Rapha's clubhouses, essentially part retail store, part cafe hangout, opened up in cycling hub spots like London, New York, and Tokyo. By the early 2010s, there were 22 Rapha clubhouses worldwide. Riders could go there, sip espresso, watch the latest race, and shop for the latest gear. These were more than stores. As Rapha put it, it's not a store, it's a club. The result was a brand community that bordered on fanatic. Rapha had made cycling stylish and aspirational. But on the flip side of cult status is exclusivity, and Rapha was nothing if not exclusive. The high prices and elitist aura meant the brand could polarize cyclists. Many loved to hate Rapha's perceived snobbery. Mottram didn't mind, as he noted, being confident, assertive and accomplishing. But on the flip side of cult status is exclusivity, and Rapha was nothing if it wasn't exclusive. The high prices and the elitist aura meant the brand could polarize many cyclists. Many loved to hate Rapha's perceived snobbery. Mottram didn't seem to mind this, and he was confident and he was assertive. He had a brand vision, and to his mind, a brand vision as strong as the identity they had built comes with a price. Not everyone is going to love you. In fact, the backlash only fueled Rapha's mystique. If you got it, you were part of the club. If not, your scorn just solidified Rapha's status as the rebel leader of cycling style and culture. By the early 2010s, Rapha's revenues were climbing, and the brand had become one of the most popular cycling outfitters on earth. It even had penetrated pro cycling scene. Rapha was the official kit supplier of Team Sky from 2013 to 2016, a partnership that put Mottram's vision onto the biggest stages on earth. By 2017, Rapha celebrated its first and only year of net profit, a modest 1.4 million pre-tax gain. The company seemed poised for bigger things. However, success brought Rapha to a crossroads. This question would become important. How do you grow bigger without losing the very exclusivity and authenticity that made the brand special. Rapha's leadership knew that to keep expanding, they might have to tone down the elitism just a notch. In fact, Mottram admitted that the next wave of growth would require bringing some of their prices down slightly to make Rapha more accessible to more people. Up to that point, Rapha had been content selling costly top-tier kit to dedicated aficionados. But there was a wider market of cyclists out there. If Rapha could find products to reach them without cheapening the brand, expansion would be possible. This delicate balance would prove difficult. Around 2016, Rapha introduced a new lower price line called Core, offering simplified jerseys and bibs at a more attainable price point. The Core range was still quality, but it lacked some of the fancier fabrics and details of Rapha's premium lines. The idea was to hook more casual riders who kind of scoffed and turned their nose up at a $250 jersey, but might spring for one at around a $100 price point. At the same time, Rapha continued to churn out those eye-wateringly expensive niche products for its loyal customers. Think limited edition leather cycling gloves at like $300 and collaboration jackets. This two-tier strategy was actually quite smart. Broaden the base with entry-level gear while still catering to the high end. This attempted to scale up without diluting that brand prestige. Now, this is where it got a little bit dicey because Rapha started experimenting also with new sales channels. Historically, you could only buy Rapha directly, either through its website or one of those cool clubhouses like Walk Into Soho. This direct-to-consumer model, it reinforced the exclusivity. Rapha was never on sale at your local bike shop or in some bargain basement bin for 50% off. But to reach more customers, Rapha dipped its toe into wholesale. In 2018, Rapha struck a deal to have some items sold on Wiggle. If you don't know Wiggle, it's a large online sports retailer famous for discount prices. For the first time, Rapha, a luxury brand, would now be available on a discount online retailer. However, Mottram insisted he'd only do this on a smaller scale and he would remain very, very careful and hands-on to protect the brand's image. They certainly didn't want to flood every bike shop with Rapha products, as scarcity was still key to the allure. Even as Rapha sought more customers, it was grappling with a problem of frequent discounting. During its peak cult phase, Rapha rarely, if ever, went on sale. You either paid full price for your Rapha products or you missed out. But as the company grew, end-of-season sales and archive clearances became more and more common to move unsold stock. Mottram acknowledged this as well, and he said this was hurting their bottom line, and he set a goal to achieve at least 70% sales at full price, which would be incredibly good, and to rely less on markdowns. This was a telling sign. Rapha was pushing volume so hard that it had to routinely put its coveted gear on sale, something that would have been unthinkable in those early Rapha years. The very concept of a Rapha sale, early years, that would have been an oxymoron. Like freshly frozen. These two words can't go together. Rapha sale. Now it's advertising on Instagram for 50% off, and it risked undermining the brand's premium mystique that it had worked so hard to build. Meanwhile, Rapha's product range was expanding beyond its road cycling roots. There were lifestyle clothing for wearing off the bike, limited runs of cookie collaboration pieces, and eventually a full mountain bike apparel range which launched in 2021. This, I found, was an especially surprising move, given that Rapha's culture was so tied to skinny tire road culture. The mountain bike line signalled, at least to me, that Rapha was willing to venture into new segments to grow. The risk being that these moves could alienate the core customers who loved Rapha for its singular focus and understated style. All these changes were subtle. A tweak to pricing here, a new sales channel there, but together they marked a shift from Rapha as a niche passion project to Rapha as a scaling business. To fuel the next stage, Rapha needed more capital, and in 2017 the perfect opportunity arrived, though it would come with consequences that not even Rapha could fully appreciate. In August 2017, Rapha's boutique image collided with big business. The company was sold in a blockbuster deal, $200 million for a majority stake to RZC Investments, an entity run by Stuart and Tom Walton. If those names sound familiar, it's because they're the heirs to the Walmart fortune. grandsons of Walmart founder Sam Walton. Overnight, Rapha went from indie darling to being backed by one of the richest families on the planet. The news turned heads immediately, both in cycling and business worlds. What were the Walton heirs doing with a high-end cycling brand? Founder Simon Mottrell, he tried to frame this sale as a huge vote of confidence. Rapha had exploded in its first decade, reaching roughly 63 million annual revenue by 2016, and Mottram said they needed a strategic partnership to take them to the next level, to go further. Several big investors had been in the shake-up for this. Reportedly, even luxury brand LVMH was interested, but the Waltons won out. Mottram stayed on as CEO and he kept a small stake, and he was so upbeat about the partnership. He emphasised that RZC wasn't a typical private equity firm looking for a quick flip. It was essentially family money, a shareholder with deeper pockets there for the long term, not to flip the investment in a few years. The Waltons, he noted, were passionate cyclists themselves. Tom Walton was an active mountain biker who poured millions into the cycling infrastructure in Bentonville, Arkansas. These guys get it, Mottram assured fans, and the plan isn't suddenly to go down market or abandon what made Rapha special, he would say. In short, Rapha had found the partners for the long run. Not everyone was convinced though. To Rapha's faithful, to those hardcore early fans, this development was jarring. Here was a brand built on elitism and impeccably cool, now tied to a family synonymous with big box retail and bargain prices. As one industry observer put it, the moment you tie a luxury brand to a family that made its name on discounts, you're no longer special. No matter how sincerely the Waltons love cycling, the optics on this were terrible. Walmart represents mainstream, mass market affordability. Rapha represented niche, high market exclusivity. The two worlds couldn't be further apart. Corporate ownership also risked killing Rapha's romantic narrative. It's hard to keep selling the spirit of gravel or the spirit of cycling when your backers also sell lawn chairs and bulk toilet paper at your local superstore. Internally, the Waltons' investment did kick off a new expansion drive, no doubt. With the deep-pocketed funding, Rapha ramped up global expansion. More clubhouses opened, including one in Bentonville, right in the Walmart's back garden. The brand pushed into new markets and disciplines. Rapha also beefed up its infrastructure, undertaking a costly consolidation of distribution of their warehouses. This was to streamline operations. All of this spending was aimed at growth, but it came with an upfront cost. For a while, growth did follow. Rapha's turnover increased significantly under RZC's tenure, reaching around 110 million by 2023. The company's retail footprint and online sales expanded worldwide. However, profits didn't follow. In fact, Rapha slipped into the red immediately after the acquisition and has never clawed its way back since. The company posted a 20 million loss in the very first half a year after the sale, and it hasn't made a profit in any year since 2017. The Walton era enabled Rapha's bold expansion, but also seemed to mark the end of its financial stability. Beyond the balance sheet, Rapha's cultural cachet took a hit after the takeover. The brand's core followers gradually sensed the change in the air. Rapha still put out beautiful marketing. Think about the stuff with Lachlan Morton, like the Tour Divide video. It's brilliant. They still made premium gear, but something had shifted. The intangibly cool factor that we all chase after. It's hard to regain once lost. The Rapha Cycling Club, once this exclusive tribe of true believers, started to feel more like a commoditized loyalty program under corporate stewardship. The brand's collaborations also became much flashier, but perhaps less authentic. A good example of this is the 2020 campaign, where they tied in with streetwear skateboard brand Palace, and they produced this neon green cartoon duck on the EF Education kit. This looked kind of cool, but when you chat with long-term Rapha fans, it left them scratching their head. To the outsiders, it was hyped and it was cutting edge, but to those Rapha veterans, it felt very try-hard move, which was mimicking trends rather than setting trends like they were used to. The cumulative effect was that Rapha's once ironclad aura of premium, out of reach, started to crack. Die-hard aficionados drifted to smaller boutique brands like Pas Normal or Café de Ciclista that retained more indie street cred and distinctiveness. Meanwhile, new customers entering cycling during the pandemic boom often didn't understand what made Rapha different. To them, it was just another overpriced option on the apparel rack, not a mythic icon of cycling lore. Rapha was getting squeezed. It had become too expensive and pretentious for the mass market and too ordinary and corporate for the tastemakers who once championed it. They were stuck in no man's land. Too expensive for the mass market, too corporate for the premium. Behind the scenes, Rapha's financial picture was deteriorating even faster than its cultural cachet. The company's annual accounts tell a horrible story. 7 consecutive years of losses and mounting red ink. The last time Rapha turned a profit was the year of the Walton buyout, 2017. Since then, it has been a long, undefeated, unbroken slide into the red. The losses have ballooned, especially in recent years. In 2022-2023 period, Rapha posted a loss of 12 million. That was bad enough, but 2023-2024 was way worse. The loss nearly doubled to 22.7 million. For a business with roughly 110 million in turnover, losing 22.7 million in a year is staggering. It was one of Rapha's worst ever years, second to only an even bigger loss of 32 million back in 2019. Have you tried to watch pro bike racing this season? It's an absolute nightmare. The only thing that's maintained my sanity this season and allowed me to keep following pro cycling, it's Surfshark VPN. With Surfshark, I can set my location virtually anywhere. So geo-blocked content, gone. Whether I'm trying to catch the highlights from Europe, watch the coverage in the US, or follow pro races around the world, Surfshark makes sure I never miss a beat. But that's just the start. It also protects your personal data on public networks. So next time you're sitting in the airport lounge or a cafe trying to upload your Strava file from the day, you're not opening yourself up to hackers and snoopers. One of my favourite features, you can use it across unlimited devices with a single subscription. So I've got it running on my laptop, my phone, my tablet, and Sarah even uses my subscription too. Plus, Surfshark has a clean private search engine called Surfshark Search. No ads, no trackers, just pure results, which is especially handy when I'm researching guests or training topics, without being bombarded by pop-ups all the time. And here's the kicker, it's completely risk-free for 30 days with a money-back guarantee. So here's what to do right now. Go to surfshark.com/roadman, or you can use the code ROADMAN at checkout to get an extra 4 months of Surfshark VPN. That's surfshark.com/roadman, and I've dropped the link and the code in the show notes down below. What's driving these losses? Rapha's report cited a turbulent and competitive post-pandemic cycling sector and decreased confidence in key markets, yada, yada, yada. What's that actually mean? Okay, translation. After the COVID cycling boom went bust, fewer people are splurging on premium lycra. Many brands were left with surplus stock and sluggish demand. Rapha also incurred exceptional costs for that restructuring we mentioned, like the warehouse consolidation project. That was 3 million. The hope is that these one-time cost expenses will streamline operations and save money in the long term though. On a slightly more positive note, Rapha claimed it managed to achieve a positive EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, etc., before these exceptional costs. In other words, their core business might be close to breaking even if you ignore big one-time charges. But of course, in real life, you can't ignore these costs. They've eaten a hole into Rapha's finances. By late 2023, Rapha's management went into full damage control mode. The CEO brought in after Mottram's departure, Francis Conversi, announced a realigning of business to the current market dynamics. Corporate speak aside, this meant cutting costs, including painful decisions like closing Rapha's North American office and laying off a lot of staff. The North American HQ got moved to Bentonville, Arkansas, again illustrating the Walton influence. But now most US operations were being consolidated back to London. They outsourced customer service and trimmed any non-essential projects. Rapha even shut down peripheral ventures like Rapha Travel, which organised cycling trips because they weren't profitable. Simon Mottram himself stepped down as CEO. That was at the end of 2021, and he handed over leadership to guide Rapha through these choppy waters to a former executive from the fashion world. In late 2023, another new CEO has come in. That's Fran Miller. Miller does come from a pro cycling world. She's managed Team Sky and Ineos. She is the sister of former World Tour rider David Miller, and her task is to steady the ship and perhaps reconnect Rapha with its cycling core. In announcing the leadership change, Mottram diplomatically said it marks a significant milestone, and he praised Miller's deep cycling knowledge and brand experience. Reading between the lines here, Rapha knows it needs to rediscover its soul and discipline if it's to survive and thrive in the next chapter. The Walton family, for their part, remain invested, literally and figuratively. With essentially endless resources, they can afford to keep Rapha afloat despite the losses. At this point, Rapha's story begins to resemble a broader pattern we've seen with other cult brands that flew too close to the sun. Rapha's rise and stall, it's not unique. It echoes the trajectory of other hyped niche brands that struggled after going mainstream. Consider Peloton, a company with a comparable arc. Peloton cultivated this fervent community around high-end exercise bikes and interactive classes, a bit like Rapha did with cycling kit and clubhouses. During the pandemic, Peloton's popularity, if you remember, it totally exploded. Its stock hit stratospheric highs, and it became the must-have home fitness exercise accessory. But then came the fall. As gyms reopened, demand cooled, and Peloton was stuck with overstocked inventory and an overbuilt infrastructure. The company's value collapsed, and by early 2022, Peloton had lost over 90% of its market cap from its peak, and its founder and CEO was ousted amid massive layoffs. Peloton's brand went from aspirational to almost a cautionary tale overnight. The common theme with Rapha? Well, both were lifestyle brands that mistook a boom, in Peloton's case the pandemic demand, in Rapha's the cycler renaissance of the early 2010s, for a guaranteed perpetual growth. They scaled up fast, only to find it outgrown the true demand and tarnished their brand aura along the way. Rapha's journey from kitchen table startup to global brand and back down to earth, it's a cautionary tale for any niche brand with a cult status. It's a story of vision, of passion, of growth, and the unintended consequences of success. So is this the end of Rapha, or is it just a rough patch along the road? There are some signs of hope. Rapha still commands strong brand recognition and a loyal core of customers who swear by the quality of its products. The company's downsizing and refocusing efforts definitely are painful, but they could eventually restore it to a sustainable footing. The new CEO, Fran Miller, she brings deep cycling credibility, which might help Rapha reconnect authentically with its community. And crucially, the Walton family's long-term investment suggests Rapha will be given the runway to adapt rather than being cut loose hastily. In an era where many cycling brands have gone under, Rapha has an opportunity to reinvent itself and perhaps claw back some of that original allure by doubling down on innovation, quality, and true cycling culture, rather than still just chasing every trend. However, regaining cool factor, it's easier said than done. Trust, once you lose it, it's hard to win back. Roadman, whether you're a weekend warrior or a world tour rider, the right tools can make all the difference. Enter 4i's Precision 3 Plus Powermeter, the latest innovation from 4i, designed to help you reach peak performance. The Precision 3 Plus Powermeter is a compact yet powerful unit. It weighs just 9 grams and it's packed with features that set it apart, including integration with Apple's Find My network, giving you the peace of mind by letting you track your power meter wherever it is. Plus, you've got up to 800 hours of battery life. We all know that accuracy is key, and 4i's delivers a groundbreaking plus or minus 1% accuracy thanks to their unique 3D strain gauge technology. For those seeking even more data, the Precision 3 Plus Pro Power Meter offers dual-sided power meter metrics, giving you detailed insights into pedaling efficiency, torque effectiveness, and left-right balance. 4i's offers versatile product options to suit your needs. Choose from ride-ready power meters with pre-installed units on Shimano cranks, or up for factory-installed power meter where you send in your crankset for a custom installation. Ready to elevate your cycling game? Trust 4i's Precision 3 Plus Power Meter. Precision, performance, and peace of mind all in one. Learn more by visiting 4iiii.com. That's 4iiii.com. I'm going to put that in the description down below. Rapha will need to convince the next generation of cyclists that it's not just a brand for rich old white guys. but it's still the standard bearer for style and substance on the bike. That might mean creating more genuinely new and exciting products, not just recycling old designs, nurturing the community with actual sincerity, not merely using it as a marketing scheme, and maybe accepting a bit of modesty in growth targets. After all, being smaller but special, it's better than being big and boring. For businesses beyond cycling, Rapha's rise and stumble, it holds a broader lesson. The things that get you to 10 million revenue might destroy you at 100 million revenue. Your unfair advantage often can't scale without being diluted. And sometimes staying small and special beats being big and generic. In chasing scale, Rapha forgot what made it irreplaceable. The brand sold its soul for growth, not by abandoning quality, but by stretching its identity too far. Will Rapha bounce back? I don't know. Perhaps. Cycling is like fashion. It's cyclical. What's uncool now can become cool again with the twist of a crank. Rapha is already a 2-decade-old brand, which means it has real heritage. There's value in that which can't be easily replicated by upstart competitors. For now, the decline of Rapha stands as a vivid case study of how a cult brand can lose its way. It began with an irresistible story of a devoted following. It soared to heights that attracted powerful Patreons, and it faltered when growth ambitions clashed with the very ethos that made it special. As Rapha navigates the road ahead, many in the business and cycling community will be watching and learning from its journey, because in the end, Rapha's story isn't just about cycling apparel. It's about the delicate art of building a brand that people love and the danger of forgetting why they loved it in the first place. Thanks for watching this. If you enjoyed it, please check out this video because I know you're going to love it, and let me know in the comments down below, can Rapha bounce back? Subscribe.